Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. Have you ever wondered how to share your story in a way that everyone would listen? Stay tuned. Good morning, Giants. Welcome to Wake Up with Giants TV. I'm Ryan Morris, and as always, I'm here with your host, Nicholas T. Smith, the author of The Giants and the Smalls. If you haven't joined us on YouTube, go to YouTube and then hit the alert button so you know when we go live every single dang time. And then we're also on Facebook, A Tribe of Giants. There's a great community there waiting for you. So go do that too.
Go do that.
Yeah, we have our Sum Gigante groups going. We've got a live group that's going to be, what day is that, Nick? That's coming up real fast.
That is this Friday and Saturday here in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so if you haven't gotten tickets yet, reach out to us, message us, DM us, send us a snail mail, something.
A pigeon.
Yeah, a pigeon mail. I actually want to try that one time and see if it gets there.
That would be rad.
Did you know you can literally do that? You can order snail mail.
We should try.
I think it takes 2 years to arrive or something.
See you never.
Anyway, join us this Friday and Saturday for 2-day event for the 12 journeys. It's going to be powerful. And so we can get you tickets for that.
Yeah, giantsandsmalls.com too if you want to see what else we're up to. It's great.
Perfect.
You want to introduce our guest?
I will. Tracy, help me with your last name. How do you say that?
It is just Lamourie.
Lamourie. Okay, I would have
got it.
Yeah, Tracy Lamourie. She's a high-profile international award-winning publicist. She's the founder and managing director of Lamourie Media, Inc. She's a regular on the red carpets and accredited by the iconic Cannes International Film Festival, and is also a Universal Women's Network 2020 Woman of Inspiration winner for the Women in Media Award, and the author of the upcoming book, Get Repped, Build Your Brand with Effective Public and Media Relations. She's been featured in Rolling Stone magazines, the Hollywood Times, NBC TV, and other major media. And she works across borders and across industries, from major entertainment projects to small businesses. She's also well known for being a longtime advocate on a myriad of important worldwide issues about amplifying important messages and being a voice for those who need one. She was recognized by media around the world for her 20-year campaign that ultimately helped free an innocent man from death row, to her working getting clients major media attention. Welcome to the show. We're going to dive into your journey.
All the way from Malta right now, is that right?
Yeah, Malta. Have passport, will travel. And lately I've been blessed to do a lot of speaking engagements, and this one brought me back to Malta in the middle of the Mediterranean, which is a tiny little island that in North America not a lot of us know about, but it's a huge vacation destination for people in Europe. And anyway, tons of history. It's super incredible. And so I thought, well, you know what? Part of being successful, I feel like, is A, working on projects you like, and so spending out your time on things you actually care about, and B, being able to do them, wherever you want. So that's what I'm doing right now, living the dream, I'm telling you.
That's awesome.
Well, good. We're going to use your journey as an example for those that are watching. We kind of go through our 12 journeys where we talk about your history and how you got to where you are, and your philosophy will come out naturally through that. Mm-hmm. And so we want to go back in time when, before you did all the things that you're doing right now. Was there a time that you didn't know what you were going to do, or maybe you thought you were something else and you were going down a path and this came up? Can you kind of walk us through that? Like, was there an awakening?
Sure.
Yeah.
This incredible career that I never envisioned it. It wasn't something I planned even until very recently, the last decade. But previous to that, in my story is that I learned how to write a press release by something that you referenced there, that I was a young activist along with my husband, Dave Parkinson. Now we had jobs in marketing and sales, working a couple of jobs to pay the mortgage, and it's in our early 20s, but nothing that we were passionate about in terms of career. And we'd never been educated to go start our own business or anything. So I never would have thought about even being an entrepreneur, let alone being a publicist, let alone being an international award-winning publicist, blah, blah, blah. But it really came out of a completely different place. So I always been a writer. I always knew how to write and put a story together. And my husband and I came upon this case of this innocent man on death row. At the time, he was in Pennsylvania, Jimmy Dennis, and wasn't a big case. And people have asked me since, what drew you to it? And it's hard to say, because I think it's because we'd recently had a radio show as students, or a student radio channel. And when that wasn't existing anymore, we were still sort of in the mode of information gathering. And so when we heard about that, I think that's what led us to write and say, okay, how innocent can this guy be? And he responded with 20 something pages written on both sides with all the details and all the court case documentation that he had in the cell at the time. Anyway, it was enough to really strike us, but we were like, well, what the heck can we do about it? A couple of kids in our 20s up in Toronto. We're not lawyers, certainly not publicists. We have no history of this, but it was the early days of the internet. So my husband learned how to make a website, and I learned how to write a press release, because we figured, well, maybe that's what we can do, our little thing. Somebody else can step in who can help. And that's, ultimately what happened after a couple of years. It's like unicorns, but a big law firm out of Washington who was looking for a case of actual innocence started asking around the country. And because of the advocacy work that we'd done, getting the name out there, everyone started telling them Jimmy Dennis, Jimmy Dennis. Long story short, hard to make this story short, but this is my journey. And it becomes a business story in a second. But in 2017, he was actually finally freed. So we started in 1998 when I learned to write my first press release, and my husband made the website. It was literally a 20-year campaign. And in 2017, he was finally freed. And, so that's a great story. And then by then, everybody's like, wow, you helped free this man from death row. And before, everyone's what's that about? Funnily enough, he comes out, he goes back to his original dream of being an R&B singer, because he always was, and they were doing quite well. Now he's a singer, and by the time he gets out, these young activists have somehow become publicists. But the way that became a business story, because I was 28 when I wrote my first press release and had no intention of ever, doing that for a living. When I was 40, and I'm 52 now, when I was 41 or so, I'm still doing just sales and marketing for things I wasn't very passionate about, just whatever jobs. It struck me that, hey, you know what, maybe that stuff I've done, because I've learned how to deal with media to the point where whenever something would happen, like someone's mom had an issue, everybody would wonder what to do. And I'd say, well, I'll write a press release. And everybody would be like, you'll write the what now? So I realized that I had learned how to deal with media, and I knew how to put together a media story and who to send it to and all that stuff, which is just a blank spot for most people. So when I was 41, 42, I suddenly thought, you know what, maybe I can put a little shingle out, proverbially, just as a freelancer, and start providing that service to small businesses, to creatives, to people like me who are building their own dream, basically, and need to get their message out. And I found that to be insanely fulfilling. I mean, recently it's become, the last few years, all the work we've done it's become financially fulfilling too, and all these trips and all that fun stuff. But even before that, at the very beginning, just getting people's messages out. At first it was, sometimes creatives or an author, that kind of thing. But then I became equally passionate about, which surprised me, about entrepreneurs and businesses, because I learned that just like I love what I'm doing and I know what I'm building and I really believe I'm bringing good to the world, people who are, entrepreneurs, they're doing in their own little area something that they're really, it's like a creative. They're creating something, they're building a lifestyle, they're building a dream. And so it's been my journey to help people amplify their messages. And that's been, really fun. And increasingly, as I get more successful, I'm able to choose, and I always have really only chosen things that I care about, but increasingly so I'm able to say no to that one, and really only take on projects that actually resonate with me, that I care, genuinely really care about. And it's just, now I can say, I'm lucky too. It gets me through, the financial issues like of COVID, et cetera, because literally from a business basis, my clients can be anybody in the English speaking world, really doing anything, any kind of business, any book, any author, any creative, really anything that needs attention. And there are a ton of ways, and I don't know how much you want to get into, but
let me pause you, because you're going on a tangent here. So let me pull you back a little bit. Okay. So the one thing that I want to hear is, you go from taking on this case about 20 20 years ago or so, right? And I'd imagine when you started it, there was a lot of learning that had to happen around trying to figure out how to do a press release, how to get it recognized, right? So the whole idea of how do you get people to listen when you've got a message that you've got to share? Because there are a lot of people that are watching this that are wondering, I've done all the advertising, I've done this, I've done that.
Exactly.
How do you stick with it? One, how did you work through any grief that came up? So sometimes you have a thing and you think it's going to go well and it doesn't go as planned. How do you work through that and re-engage with what you want to create?
And yeah, and you mentioned too, a lot of people will be listening, wondering how to do that. I was going to say there are,
Yep.
actual real ways that people can not just think, oh, I'd like to do that, but really listen to this and then go off and do things that don't involve calling up a publicist or working with a publicist. But there are ways, that people always think if you're a business or a creative or whatever you're doing,
Yep.
and you want to get a message out, people have heard of press releases. So if you want to do a traditional press release, just make sure it's editorial and not advertorial. Like you said, you have to consider yourself as a source giving information and really think who this editor or this podcaster or whatever, what does their audience need? You're gifting them with the information that you can provide. It's not an opportunity for free advertising, though, you'll get seen and there'll be those benefits as a result of what you're doing. But you have to make sure that you understand that they're not there to give you free ads. They'll be happy to send you to the ad department, and you're not looking for an ad. You're looking to provide, to build your credibility.
So you're really like, your goal should be to help the media source, whatever that is, reach their goal, which is to support their audience. Is that
exactly?
Yeah.
And if you're thinking that way, then you're thinking editorial, which is the number one thing before you ever think about how to write a press release, who to send it to. You have to make sure you have the mindset of edit, because you can burn as many bridges as you can build with media.
Yeah.
Editorial, not advertorial. So it's not, hey, we have a great sale. It's, maybe you're looking at say you're and I always say it doesn't matter what you do for a living, whether you're a doctor, baker, candlestick maker, the guy who does the lawn.
Yeah.
There are media stories. You have a professional knowledge that the general public doesn't have. So you might see a story not in the media, think, gee, there's a lot of your lawn guy. There's a lot of this kind of bug this year. And so maybe you think you can pitch to the media story where you're talking about, hey, have you noticed there's more of this kind of bug this year than last year? So that's the press release or the, media advisory. But on the other side, real quick, and then I'll,
you're good. Go ahead. Yep.
But on the other side is really important too, and almost no entrepreneurs or creatives or people understand this part of it, is there's a ton of platforms or whatever you want to call them, different places where you can source what I call the opposite of a press release, where you can go and find media who's already been assigned a story, and now they're looking for the experts to fill that story. And so just like there's podcast matchup services, there's also things like, some of these are free. So if you guys are listening, anyone listening, take note of these. Harrow, Help a Reporter Out. That's a free thing. You go sign up for.
That's a big one, right? Help a Reporter Out.
And again, you have to, a lot of people are on it, but I've gotten clients in major media because of it, not because they know who I am, because it's about the pitch, about, again, that editorial versus advertorial, being succinct and answering exactly what they're asking, and also doing it quickly. You don't write a big long essay because they're writing the article. They just want the little quote that you can. So there's Help a Reporter Out. That's a big one. But there's also one called Source Bottle, primarily Australian, but not exclusively. Then there's the hashtag, just the hashtag on Twitter, so it's also free. Journal Request. You see a lot of UK stuff in there, but again, not exclusively. There's one that I pay $200 upwards a month for, which is Qwoted, Qwoted. It's a really good one. It gets a lot of the Harrow stuff, the day before, and also stuff that is exclusive to it. Yeah. So if an entrepreneur or somebody wants to either spend the time or the money on a few of them, or just the time going through all the things that may be irrelevant to them, but finding a few gold ones, answering them, those are amazing tools that you can do and start without a publicist, racking up some major media, like, things like Reader's Digest, CNN, everybody uses them. Fox,
beautiful. Beautiful. There's so much to unpack here, so we're going to do our best to do that. Help a Reporter Out. I heard about them years ago from a friend of mine, and that's a big organization right there.
And it's free.
So talking about, when you were just learning this, when you were going down the road of writing your first press releases, and let's say you put it out there and you didn't get the response you thought you'd get. maybe only one person responded or nobody responded. Does that go back to the idea of being advertorial, or how did you learn to move it to where people would listen? Does that make sense?
I can't really remember exactly because my journey was mixed with, the activist part of it, which was a bit different than the business stuff. But what I advise, I'll go with what I advise. So even when I put out a press release, and then people say, oh, what are we going to get picked up in? We don't know. Because number one, you've got to write a, like you said, as hit editorial versus, so make sure you made sure 100% is and double, and you've edited yourself 10 times, and you make sure it's editorial. That still doesn't mean it's going to be picked up, because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's the editor's decision. Who may, there may be multiple reasons why he doesn't take it. It may be a story that he agrees is great for his audience. But I remember one example where I had a actually great business story. It was a celebrity client, but a great business story, blah, blah, blah. All kinds of bells and whistles that hit, but I couldn't get a place in the financial papers. And I was like so incensed, because I'm like, man, I can't understand why this one I really thought would be picked up. And so because of my reputation, I had enough pull, I guess, to get called back from the editors of 2 of the financial papers, big ones. And they literally called me back, and one of them spent like 45 minutes on the phone with me. And they went through the whole release going, you know what, Tracy, you're right. It literally is perfect. But let me tell you what the landscape is for the financial bit, this is specifically the business press. He said, my 10 pages that I used to have that I could put articles in is now 3 pages. And 1.5 of that, half the time, is going to sponsors. He says, I myself have 12 stories I really want to place. So you could have that, but I just can't have it all the time. So you could run into something like hard thing like that. But other times it could be a news cycle, like when COVID hits or when the Queen dies or something. You think, well, that has nothing to do with my thing. But you go, if it's a big enough thing, you go, oh, you know what? You might as well throw your press release in the garbage and put it out today, because limited newsrooms. If they only have 10 reporters, 8 of them are doing that, and the other 2 are doing the other things, and you're just lost. And you got to worry about timing too. Like sometimes, especially if you're doing an event or something, you want to get it out right away, but a month away is great if they're going to help you sell tickets, but that's not their job, and they may not be planning to do it. They want to do it closer. So it's all a balance, right? It's some of it's hit and miss, but that's where, and this is editorial. This is an example of advertorial rather than editorial.
Yep.
A publicist, knows, it's like a lawyer in a courtroom. We've navigated those waters, and we know when we send out a press release, though it may not get any more pull. I mean, usually there's some likelihood that if publicist sends it, you'll get more, but not always. But the other thing is, if we're sending out a press release, and that's, we're winning with that, at the same time, we're like monitoring all this other incoming media. We're finding other resources. We're pulling on the resources that we already have to, editors, reporters, can you at least get a feature here, get one here? So while we're waiting for that, we're already getting action here and here and here. So I always say, if somebody has, about a marketing budget, and this is not the same as marketing, but if you do have a marketing budget, rest it for a month and give it to a publicist, or even half of it to a publicist, and just see what you come up with. Because the worst that can happen is you're going to see how they present you. You're going to get those buyers. If they're good, you should be getting some links and some immediate things that you can say, as seen on, as seen in. All those kind of things.
Right.
And the difference for people who don't know really what the difference between PR, marketing, and advertising is, I heard a great thing recently that I've been quoting like crazy, but I can't remember who said it. It was some senior publicist, with initials, I don't remember who it was. But he was saying, basically the difference between the 3 is advertising is if a young man is out with a girl and he tells her how fantastic he is and how skilled he is, that's advertising. If he tells her how pretty she is and what a great conversationalist she is, that's marketing, because it's saying the right thing to the right person. But PR is if somebody else tells the young woman how awesome the guy is.
I like that. Yeah, that's a great analogy there, right?
Mm-hmm. It puts it all in kind of.
Yeah. I mean, as I've been learning how to market what we're doing, I haven't done a lot of press releases with the Giants and the Smalls. I've done the marketing for sure, and the advertising for sure, and people, they have a different response when it comes to advertising, to marketing, to press release. Right. Sure. And so how do you deal with the emotion of it? Like, you have something you think is great, and you put it out there, and editors, they either don't respond or they respond like the one said. How do you deal with the feeling of, I would imagine there's some sadness over, I thought that would go a different way.
Yeah, especially when it's something close to someone's heart. And that's where you have to really just make them realize that, it really depends on number one, it depends. It's not about that. The editor could love it, and meanwhile they can't take it on for whatever reason. And secondly, you're looking at all the options. There's a whole world of media opportunities out there. So if you're properly looking at different media options and opportunities, then you'll be getting some things that will temper that, disappointment.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully we didn't lose you here, but there we are. So say that again. So you're looking at different opportunities to temper the disappointment. So you're looking at multiple places. Is that what you said?
Yeah, because we're always going to be looking at different opportunities. So, you'll be putting out a press release, but if that's not getting an immediate response, we're also looking at the Harrows, the journal request or whatever. And we're also, pulling on things this is where a publicist can pull on things quickly that you don't have, existing relationships with reporters or, editors, etc., that could get you some immediate action while you're waiting for the pitches to work.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hear this as, don't put your eggs in one basket. Like, be out there pursuing every possibility you can imagine. And the thing with a publicist is that a publicist can help you get some of the responses that maybe you don't have access to because of their relationships, right?
Yeah. Otherwise, it's just build. And if you don't, because you don't have to have a publicist, but then you have to spend a lot more time building, and there may be less immediate response. But if you hire a publicist, within a day or two, they'll be drawing on their existing relationships, starting, like, we have a wider network other than just, looking up the way I did when I was starting, what's the info at whatever, newspaper.com, news tip at, we still send to those, but then you also have 15 editors you're sending it to, and the particular reporters who write on that. And we have access to resources that we pay hundreds of dollars a month for that save you from having to go buy all these things, where you can find reporters in an instant in whatever area who write on whatever if you don't already have them. So
yeah, I know a lot of creatives, they want to take on all the hats. They put on all the hats, like doing their marketing, doing their advertising, doing their publicity, right?
But then when are you doing your creative stuff?
Yeah, exactly. And it really does shut down. So when we launched this book, we were working with Richard Paul Evans, and he said that the thing you need more than anything is a platform. And he said, it doesn't matter if you had the best book in the world, nobody's going to read it if you don't have a platform. So we shifted focus and started building a platform. And man, it took almost all of the attention. So all the creative stuff, there was some creation around the platform, but all the creativity around additional books or things like that kind of shut off, because you compartmentalize.
Yeah. And you're learning a whole new thing. I mean, it's like me learning how to, to be an expert landscaper instead of just paying someone to do that so that I can do what I'm good at,
Right.
And what I enjoy.
Yeah, that's the value. And when did you learn that? At what point did you decide, I'm not going to source publicity, I'm going to be the source?
Well, I mean, like I said, I was a young activist when I had to get a message out, a young advocate, and it was a life or death situation. It was someone I believe was innocent who turned out, now the world knows we were correct, right? But at the time, nobody was listening, and we were like, okay, well, how are we going to get this message? We don't have money for a lawyer. That's not, we're not lawyers. We can't advance this, but all we need to do is get somebody's ear. So how do we do that?
Yeah.
We'll try with the internet, this new thing, which also gave us the power to reach out, easier than it would have 30 years ago, right? How would we have done it 30 years ago? Then it was a different industry, a whole different thing, like newspaper, like being a news person was a different industry back then. Now it's electronic, and we're able to contact each other. And if you know how to do the messaging, and, again, the problem too with doing it yourself, we get into the editorial versus advertorial. A lot of times, and this is unfortunate, I hate to say it, because when I started, I certainly wasn't a publicist. And I do believe you can get your message out without having a publicist. But one thing that entrepreneurs do run into, and I hear it all the time, is because I've even had a couple say to me that editors have told them, that's great, come back when you have a publicist, which I thought was ridiculous because they already opened the email. But I think when I thought about it a lot, because I thought that was just crazy. But what it is you think about how full your email inbox is, and the editor of paper, you get 1,000 a day, however many pitches a day. And when you start looking through them, the ones from entrepreneurs often, and even, are like 80% advertorial and not actually anything you could ever consider. It's not, so they don't have time, literally don't have time to go through and edit all that. So what's ended up happening is a lot of times they just won't. If it's from, Bob's trucking place, whatever, they're not going to because they
Sorry,
figure
Bob.
but you know what I mean? Because they figure a publicist is they figure our job for them, because we wouldn't last very long as a publicist if we sent a bunch of advertorial stuff. They'd never open another email from us.
Yeah.
So
beautiful.
they to be giving them something that is, well, they may not take it because they may have other,
but more likely to look at it, right? Like
it is at least worthy of the news, that they expect that to be vetted.
Yeah, right. So that's what you do. That's the value that a publicist does. Yeah, Bob's Trucking is not sponsored by Wake Up with Giants.
Yeah, because I tell Bob, no, that's great. It's a good press release. We can do a press release, but that's not the way. That's not the header for it.
Right.
We have to find something that's topical. So there's a way to present it where they'd be like, "Oh, that is interesting." We haven't, So it's nothing wrong with the trucking or Bob, but it's that the editor doesn't have the time to educate Bob about what the editor needs. So the editor assumes Tracy, even if he doesn't know Tracy, he sees that PR firm, whatever, that we've vetted. At least because my job would be to say to the client, yeah, that's, great, but that's not a news release.
So he can filter that down because of you, people like you, right? That do that for him.
Yeah, and then he can look through it. Okay, this is one we're going to take or not, but at least they're all appropriate news, potentially good news stories for him.
Well, you think of us as creatives, like we think our stories are the best. They're our babies. Like we think everybody should love it. It reminds me of the Christmas Story where he writes this paper about shooting a bear and saving the community and stuff. And he's imagining her writing A++ on the board. Like that's how we look at our stuff, right? We're like,
no, but it might be. But the thing is, there could be 10 other that equally like amazing, create, and then they only have a spot. They're sad because they get 8 of these and they only have a spot for 1, and they're ripping their hair out because it really is awesome. But there's just physically a wall that they don't have the space, right? So
right. I've run into that because we're working toward the movie, right? One of the goals that we have with this is a movie, but you're limited without a literary agent because the movie production companies won't even talk to you until you have an agent, because legally they're trying to vet, like you said, they're vetting down, right? Similar to, I think of Harry Potter. What's her name that wrote
J.K. Rowling?
J.K. Rowling. Yeah, she had to sell a certain number of books before anybody would even look at her, right? She was a self-published
She got turned down a lot.
Yeah. Imagine how many equally great or potentially equally great writers who just didn't manage to hit that. And it's funny because it's like you said at the beginning, when you write a book, you have to have a platform. And I often talk to authors who, they did a self-publish, which is great. And then they just had, whatever the publishing company did, like a random press release, but they did just like on the wire. They weren't actually working to get them interviews or whatever. And I always say, like, I know you just spent all that money and all that time to bring that book into the world. Like, I get it. It's a lot of work. It's years and it's money. And now you feel like you're done. But guess what? You're not, because if you just put that book on the shelf, you're waiting for the Amazon orders to come in. Nobody's even seeing it in the search. So I always think, like having a baby, guess what? Now you got to feed the baby. I know you did a lot of work, but now you got to feed the baby. You can't just put it on the shelf. If you feed it, it's going to do what you expect it to. It's going to grow and develop. But if you don't, it's just dead on the shelf.
But also knowing what to feed it, right? Because like my deal is I see, we've got a great book. We got a great platform. We have a whole training program around it. We have the movie idea. We have the film Bibles, everything prepared, but nobody's banging down our door, right? It's like you can have all of the right stuff in place. But it's not like some magic where somebody just comes and knocks on the door. You got to constantly be out there looking.
Yeah, you got to go to Cannes. People don't know, like the Cannes Film Festival. That's why I go. It's great, the red carpets and everything, right?
Right.
But they don't tell you until you're in the back rooms. Literally $3 billion worth of film deals go on at Cannes. So those carpets that you see, that's like the culmination of the work that went on the years before, know. But the real stuff is in the back room. And you go in there, it's just like, it looks like any conference you've ever been to, except for all the little tables are movie posters of, conceptual, and some are in various stages of concept or, but they're like a movie poster. And then the guys sitting there, hi, I'm someone, and there's a million distributors there, and there's a million film, whatever company, like all the different levels of people are shaking hands and making deals. And
So this little quarter here, this was given by Abigail Elia, has triplets. She's a friend of ours. And we were down at an event in Phoenix, and one of the girls hands me this quarter and says, "This is for your book and your movie." Right. So I took the quarter and made it into a piece of jewelry here to memorialize it. But the idea is I won't quit until this is a reality. But, you know, the idea of doing it on your own, and this is one thing I've learned from mentors, is when you have a mentor, they know the shortcuts, like they know the things that don't work. And so for me, like finding somebody that I can align with that helps bypass all of the learning, because it could take me decades to really filter through and figure this out. Right. And so finding that agent, you know, the literary and film agent, is going to require me to let go of some of my control over my creation. Right. Can you speak about that a little bit?
Yeah, I have the same trouble, even just as an entrepreneur. My creation, my business that has my name on it, you know, which is this PR and media business. And the people that come to me, they come to me by my reputation, and they talk to me. And I'm not, like, so far, the only hiring I've done is, you know, like literally seriously administrative stuff, where they might be researching something for me, giving it to me. Nothing client work, nothing, nobody writes. I have a hard time, you know, like, so. Yeah. I have a hard time, so I can understand. And that's a lesson that, you know, something I'm still learning. We still have to learn that there are talented, committed people out there who, if we find the right person, can be actually, you know, help us move our projects forward and help fill gaps in that we don't have. And even just like you said, knowledge that we don't have. It's not about being able to figure it out. We could all figure everything out. We could figure rocket science out. We could figure, but do I want to stop doing PR? Do you want to stop doing what you're doing so that we can go figure out what somebody else is already really, really good at? You know, like because, you know, like even from a creative to a writer to whatever, if you're stopping to do, and then I don't want to sound advertising because I'm just going to say PR, but it could be anything. If you're stopping to do marketing, if you're stopping to do, you know, the decorating your walls of your business or whatever, if you're stopping to do all those things, when are you building your business? When are you singing if you're creative? When are you writing your book? We can't do all those things. You know, we have to at some point, and why not let, you know, somebody who's figured out that aspect and has those connections, and so we don't have to figure out 10 new things while we're trying to move our one thing forward. Remember what they told us when we were kids, riding a bike? Whatever direction you're looking in, that's where you're going to go. So you got to keep looking literally where you want to go. And unless you want to learn how to be a publicist or learn how to be a marketing guy or learn how to, you know, don't veer off there too much, because to do it, you're going to have to either do it half-assed or you're going to do it a good job. Right. And if you're going to be doing a good job, you're going to be taking some time out of what you primarily are doing. And then
And sometimes that happens where you do have to split focus. We split focus. We work full time and we have this book. And so, like, you know, there is a split focus there, but you don't have to split it too far. Like,
how many splits can you do? Though?
Yeah, exactly. Because that can really drain the energy.
I can't do the splits.
Very inflexible, very rigid. Yeah. But narrowing, you know, give attention where you need to give attention. But if you have it spread too far, too diffused, then it becomes really ineffective. And so we've had to say no to a lot of things because we have focus in primarily two things right now, plus family, you know. So doing that has allowed us to grow as much as we have. If we could put all of our attention into it, I'm certain it would go even further, because we'd have all of our focus on one thing, like a laser versus the sunlight, right? Yeah. And so how do you, let's talk, we were talking a little bit about grit. You know, how do you stick with something for so long? Like, even when you can't see the outcome that you're hoping for, how do you stick with it so long?
Well, I'll refer back to the Jimmy Dennis story for that one, because that was 19 years. And people look at it now. How'd you do that for 9? And there was like 2 execution dates in the middle there. And it wasn't, now people are like, oh, wow, you freed an innocent man from death row. That's great. Hollywood wants to talk about it. Everything's fantastic. But back in those days, it was like, you're what now? That, okay. You know, so it wasn't a big glamorous thing. It wasn't a whatever. It was a commitment thing. And really, I credit Jimmy because he kind of organized it, like, you know, always keeping us positive and not having us lose focus and all that stuff, which is pretty smart. But he always says never give up. And imagine not just having dealt with that for the 19 years we did, but being the guy in there and everyone's telling you there's no way and it's impossible and blah blah blah. And he always just said never give up. And now he has a shirt on that says never give up. And I always add to that, because I just saw this part in a little meme somewhere. literally a little Facebook meme, but it said, we didn't get this far to only get this far. So even now we still talk to Jimmy, even if he's having a bad day or whatever, he'll be like, never give up. And I'll be like, we didn't get this far to only get this far. Because in this story, I mean, we got really big difference from where you were. You're talking to me from a cell and not a cell,
Right, right.
But I love that quote for all of us, no matter where we are in business or in life. I would say it's great if you're doing well and succeeding, even better. Motivation. I didn't get this far to only get this far. I'm going to keep going. But I think even more, if you're not feeling so great, and if you think you're in a crappy place and you're looking around, you're like, oh, this isn't where I wanted to be, and you're not happy with your life. Switch it around and realize, no, you know what? You didn't get this far to only get this far. Whatever, everybody's had a lot of crap in their life, whatever personal crap you have had, whoever tried to bring you down, whoever wasn't nice to you, all that stuff, you got through all that, right? Because you're sitting there today. Even if you're feeling crappy, you're sitting there today. So you did not get through all of that to only get to this feeling today.
Yeah, that's powerful right there, right? Yeah, because we have with what we do what are called the 12 journeys. And so we sit with people in their past. So we do what are called the 6 root journeys first, where we really dive into what their inner story is and all that they've been through. So it's not quite therapy, but it's on the edge of it, right? It's this idea that when you start to embrace, like, all of that created me where I am today. Like, I am where I am today. And that's it. It is what it is. It's not, you're not negating it, denying it, anything. But it's with that you're going to build your future. Like, you're going to use that as a launch pad for your future. And you didn't get this far, like you said, just to get this far. And a lot of people do. They think this is it for me. This is as much as I've got. I'm exhausted. Some of them are overwhelmed. And it's like, no, you didn't get this far to get this far. There's more to do.
Yeah, and there's always another option. We're in our little boxes. We don't know what's out there, whether it's mentally, right? It always is mental, but whether it's mentally or literally, whether it's at home or even looking back, I mean, people like, some of the people who are completely miserable with their life, who are like on a treadmill, and I know a couple of friends of mine, they're always saying, change your life, because, for example, great example of not being able to see, even though you can't really see behind. So they're like, Toronto, where houses are like $1 million for a regular little 2-bedroom family home, and they've got a home that if they sold it, they would probably have like, $700,000, which wouldn't do much in Toronto because you just have to buy another house and you'd be struggling in the market, Right. But if you literally one of them is, from the Mediterranean family background, whatever. If you came out here to Malta or to Italy or to Portugal or to wherever and took that $700,000 that you just sold your house, that you're literally struggling to the point where you can't see your family and you're depressed, literally depressed, and there's no future because you can't take a day off or even a vacation, but I told a guy here that, the driver here in Malta, that because you can get a house here for like $200,000, you're buying a really nice house. I mean, it probably has a pool. It probably has, so you take your $700,000.
Everybody just packed up and they're on their way to Malta.
Right? No, but you know what I'm saying? But in all these kind of other places too,
all over the world, right? Yeah.
And we don't think about it, but you know what? We could get a digital passport. They have all these things open now, or you just go over for 3 months, see if you like it. A couple like that, and a lot of people are sitting on things, they would still have $400,000 left. So if you want to go home and visit your family 5 times a year, you've got $400,000 if you sell your house.
Yeah.
But we don't think of these things because we're stuck in wherever we're at. And that's just an example about physically. But I mean,
I like that.
In so many different ways, we don't see. So if you're really stuck, if you really feel like there's nowhere, like, open up, Google something, figure something else out, take a vacation, and see other people move. People move. In our homes, we see people who moved here all the time, who picked up everything they didn't know, and they didn't have the language, and they moved here and figuring it out in a place which sometimes not friendly even, We can do that too. You're allowed to go places, do it.
Well, so I want to play with this, because when you started on your journey to help this gentleman out, right? Did you have a clear vision of how it would go? Did you know every pathway? Did you know every step you needed to take?
No, we were brand new we didn't even know anything about the death penalty. We didn't know anything about the criminal justice system. We just really believed that if people heard about this, they would be as disturbed as we were. So it was just all about communicating with people. We thought we can't do anything.
Yeah. How did you hang on to hope through that? And how did you overcome obstacles when they came up? And did you have obstacles, or was it just a
Well,
smooth?
yeah, there were death. No, I mean, it was hard. He had death dates, and it was only because they hadn't gone through these appeals yet that he didn't get executed. But if people hadn't filed things at the right date, blah, 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 they would be serious. And, because it got personal, I guess. It was nothing, we couldn't walk away from it at that point. It was a person, not a cause. It was a human being that was calling us every week, whose family we got to know. And even though it was all remote and just by phone and by letters and all that, when you have the mother calling you, we know the family, he had one 15-minute call a week, and they couldn't afford to take it. So we took it. And then we would call and tell the family any messages and all that. So it got to be like, no, we didn't come into this for nothing. Like, did we start doing this 5 years ago, 6 years ago, 7 years ago? This isn't a joke. This isn't a game. We cannot walk away from this, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't like we were just on the sidelines. We really became integral. Like he'll say, when we came in, everything changed. I don't say it that way. I think everybody, but I mean, he says it became more cohesive then. We made a website, which was a focal point for people to go to. And then, so then more people became involved, but he saw it as, we were like the CEOs, is how he looks at it now. Like we were, he explained it to me next. I asked him the same thing. How did you keep all that, keep it together and not lose it over those 20 years? Because he had a lot, it was in there. But he had the hope. It's all about hope, right? When someone's listening to you, and that's why communication matters. And even on a large scale, which is the media, right? No matter what it is, and no matter what it is that you're doing, you have to be heard doing it.
Yeah, you see, I see a great connection here between, the vision that you have that creates the hope, and then, the vision is creating his freedom. How you're going to do that, you have no idea when you start. You don't even have the skill sets to do that when you start, but you can do it, right? And so you're willing to overcome those obstacles to get there. That's based on hope theory. That's what that says, is that when we have the vision and we have the hope that we can create a brighter future, then we not only know we can do it, we know we can overcome anything to get there.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, that's true.
So when we do that, we're willing to go out and learn what we need to learn, gain the skills we need to gain. And I think of, thinking of marketing and PR around this same idea, is that when you have a hope that you have a message that can impact the world, then you're going to overcome the obstacles, and you're going to align with people that can help you overcome those obstacles. I mean, we've been able to do that with the Giants, as we have friends all over the world now that help spread the message. We haven't done that with the media yet, but we're figuring that out, right? And now we met you. So the beauty is that pathways open up. Like when we began this, there was no vision or no idea that a Tracy Lamourie would be on the call with us today, right? Not even on the horizon. So how do you know which things to act on and which ones to leave alone? Let's play with that a little bit.
That's a good question. I guess always by instinct. I mean, generally when I advise clients, is go wide on media opportunities, whether it's small podcast, like a small podcast, a big podcast, I don't even care, as long as it's on message and well done. I often say to people, because it's about getting your message out to all kinds of, everybody's audience, as long as it's on message and well done. So that's really my barometer when I'm looking at for clients, and for myself, it's just gut feeling.
Okay. There's a study, a TED Talk that was done on slime mold. I'll say it more clearly there. But what it does is they put different subway stations. I think it was in New York or Europe or somewhere, but they put food on each of the subway stops, right? So the slime mold, what it does is it expands out in all directions, right? And then it narrows down to the most efficient path to each of those points. and it created the subway system for that city better than their engineers could have imagined. Wow. And so sometimes with our creations, it's, that idea of slime mold, which may not be the most appealing, is go out and go wide. Like you said, you go wide, right? Then you look for the paths where you're getting movement.
Exactly, where there is that interest. And in that way we get to that, earlier thing, which is how do you avoid that disappointment? Well, if, you're not getting this, you have your 10, sure, we all want to be in this, and this. But if that's they're not resonating right now, it doesn't mean they won't later too. I've had editors tell me also, that same story. Actually, he was giving me some other tips. He's like, and don't just have it necessarily, here you just did one press release and it didn't work, so then you're all out. He goes, break down your release, and part of the release is the client. They were giving out awards during this event that they were doing the press release about, and they had listed in the awards, this, we're going to be giving out awards to these 5 guys or whoever they were, women, whatever.
Yep.
And the editor said, what you should do instead, here's an idea, is send it out every week. Send out one saying, oh, and don't forget us, this, we're announcing that we're giving Bob's Trucking an award, and then on Tuesday or next week, send another one, and then another one. Because what happens then, the first one, even if they haven't, because it doesn't mean they've looked at it and gone, oh, this is crap, I'd never publish this. That's not what happened. They just decided on that day that there wasn't the news story for them.
It didn't fit, right? Yeah.
And I mean, you don't want to be throwing garbage at them again, editorial versus advertorial, right? But if it is potentially something they could use, do it again. And then what happens too is the first time they've heard you say the name, maybe they never heard of you. And maybe that's part of the reason psychologically they didn't think, we're just going to leave that, whatever, And the second time they've heard that name, maybe they don't even remember why they've heard it, but, oh, yeah, I've heard Bob's Trucking. Yeah, they do a lot of stuff. By the third or fourth time. So again, sometimes you're sending that press release, and I say this to clients, if I don't think it's going to get picked up, I go, I'll be surprised. But sometimes they actually surprise you, pick up the ones you think won't get picked up, so you never really know. But I honestly, that happens too. It's really annoying. But I'll sometimes say, I don't think this is going to get really any play, but it doesn't matter. I still think we should put it out, because it's about letting the newsroom know who you are and that you're a player. And then next year, or next month or whenever it is, when we tell them something else, and then by the third time we tell them what you've done, then they're starting to be like, oh, yeah, okay.
These guys, I know those guys, we go way back, right?
We've never covered these guys. Maybe we should start paying, and then you never know, the fourth one, boom.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's a long game. Sometimes it's short. I got one client in Good Housekeeping the day after she hired me, and Good Housekeeping magazine, the print on every newsstand in the world, was insane.
Yeah.
So
wow.
You never know. And there's not necessarily start low and grow big. It's just literally go wide means everything from the Rolling Stone to the CNN to the, next door.
Yeah. Look for energy flow, right? And then when it doesn't go the way you imagined, don't give up, right?
Exactly. No.
Right? Do it again. And if it doesn't go that way, do it again. And there will be a point. How do you know when to stop putting energy into something?
Oh, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know that I have an immediate answer to that. I guess I would say I usually go a lot on just gut and feeling, and that's instinct, right? Pretty well, I think when things, but there's a difference between feeling. You just got to make sure, like maybe maybe not everybody doesn't know though, between that feeling down, feeling depressed, wanting to kick the can, but you still get up and realize. But then, so at some point you got to realize, maybe you just got to do it a different way. Something you're doing wrong. It's not necessarily the idea that's wrong, but it's something else that's not working right. So
for me, time of day matters. Like in the mornings till about 1 o'clock, I've got tons of energy for creation. By the end of the day, I don't want to talk to another human, right? So it's like,
mostly because he's talked to me all day.
I've talked to Ryan all day and I'm burned out. But I noticed that even the feeling of depression, depression, I think as Lisa Feldman Barrett said, that we feel depressed when we don't measure up to our own ideals. Right. So we have this vision of how it's going to go. We play it out in our mind. We take ownership of it, and then it doesn't go that way. And then we start to measure ourselves based on that. Right. But with depression, what we're trying to do is say, okay, that didn't work. That's what depression is designed to do, is get us to pull our energy back so that we can start putting it towards something that does work. Right. But people get stuck in rumination, so they don't get back into re-engagement. But if you can just shut your day off and start again the next day, right? Yeah. Try a different path, right? Try something else. Even if you're feeling depressed in the morning when you wake up.
Yeah, don't get into that negative.
Yeah.
I don't know what goes on in the Mediterranean.
It's aliens, it's fine.
She gets zapped
up like a helicopter, like really low.
Well, they're
on your roof,
right? Yeah.
Wow. Sorry. This is what happens when the digital nomad worker traveler person.
Yeah, it's cool. It's what we get when we go live. It's awesome. See,
a little light beam comes down. We're like,
it went away. Apparently, it's okay.
It gets sucked out through the roof.
Yeah.
Cool. So, we're coming up on time. We got about 10 minutes left, and I want to hit, just anything that you thought you'd want to share that maybe we missed, but also I want to talk about legacy too. Like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing anything that you're doing? Right? Maybe we start there and then we go back to the other.
Well, I mean, I started doing it for a particular, I'm not going to say cause. It was, he was a person, but it was a cause, an issue, a person, right? That was what it was. That's what started my media journey.
Yeah.
And then from the business perspective, I mean, it's funny because it was not well thought out business plan. I was literally like, I bet you I can do this freelance. I started doing freelancing. It worked really well. And then, my tax person was like, oh, you know what? You really need to do a business. So I was like, oh, okay, whatever. So me and my husband did, what do you call it? Like a general partnership, which is like a solopreneurship, but two. Mm-hmm. And that was working really well for 5 years. And then she's like, okay, you really have to incorporate. And I was like, nah, that sounds crazy. Incorporate. I mean, that's ridiculous. I just sounded like way too complicated and businessy for me. Thankfully she pushed me because she was like, no, you're really, you're doing all this international work. You're about to go, you're going to be paying the government all kinds of money. If you don't incorporate, you've got to have the business be paid and then you get paid as an employee, blah, blah, blah. Right. So we did all that. And now it's going really well. And so I don't know, it wasn't I'm just trying to say it's not a business journey that I planned. I knew nothing about business or starting business. It was all, again, just about helping people that needed to get their message out. It was on a small scale. And then when I even started doing it for pay, it was, people that I really like authors whose book I thought was really cool. Like Rosa Parks' cousin hired me for her film about her, so things that I was like, wow, I can't believe I'm working on this. And, so it started to, that's how my early days in working on this were. It was all stuff like that. And then I was looking for projects that I wanted to work on. And so I'd be reaching out. Even now, if I read a book and I like the book, I'll think, I wonder if they have a publicist. Yeah. Because I want to work on things that I actually like. And that happens a lot. So why do I, everybody needs to make a buck. But, I feel like I heard the other day about a publicist, I guess one of these senior, older, original, they were saying he was the guy who started modern PR. I don't know if that's for good or bad. I don't know who he was or anything about him. But I did hear that he was still going to his office in New York City in 92 years old. And I was just like, and they were all like, oh, wow. And I was like, yeah, it sounds like a publicist.
Yeah,
If
cool.
you really love what you're doing because you really do care about your clients, and it's also fun. Like it never gets old to be like, oh, I got you and whatever, oh yay, and they get all excited. And it's
that's fun, right? Yeah, that's
so
exciting.
at the end of the day, I feel like I'm helping people I'm helping people be heard.
Yeah.
And I've been doing increasingly more and more speaking about it because through COVID, I wasn't just pitching my clients to podcasts, but I saw all these business related podcasts that I knew I had this, important component of information. I thought, I'll start doing racking up a few for myself. And then I started to really realize how much people don't know about PR and in terms of how they can access it and how they can use it and the difference between advertising and really 90% of entrepreneurs. And it's an essential component. Like I always say, there's no big corporation in the world that doesn't have a communications or PR department. There's a reason, right?
Yeah. There are things that some people can do on their own, but this is an area where you really do want to lean on an expert, right? Somebody that made it their life and their devotion to create this. I mean, this is your passion. You're willing to suffer for this thing, right? That you love.
And it's really about relationship building. So you have to, 20 years of doing this, 10 years of doing this, you have built a lot of relationships.
Right.
And you can start at the ground, but then you got to figure out, you're starting at the ground. And you have a great story. You can still get it out there. I'm not saying you can't. Right. I was a publicist when I started, but it's not easy. It's not just a matter of sending it. I've heard people say, oh, well, they're always looking for content. Well, yeah, but not like that. Like I've heard literally people say, "Oh, can you get me in with Fortune?" Like they're looking for, as though I could just send them a little thing with this little bit. No, they're not desperate for the like they're looking for specifics.
They're not looking for Bob's Trucking, right? Like
and they might be.
Sorry,
Bob.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? It's all in the presentation and because it's about the small guy has as much to say as the big guy.
Yeah.
As long as like I always say, the only difference between you, no matter who you are, and the people in your industry that you see on TV or the people in your industry you see getting awards, the only difference is that they put themselves out there. They made themselves available.
Yeah.
They suggested the stories.
Yeah. Their product might be similar or not even as good as your product.
Exactly.
They put themselves out there, right?
You got it.
Do you have a website, Tracy?
I do finally. It's funnily enough, for like 8 years, I didn't even have one, and I would never let one of my clients do that. But it was all word of mouth. I was like, get one. And then I realized, yeah, I really do need one. So yeah, LamourieMedia.com.
Okay.
And that's LAMOURIE media.com. And you can see on there all kinds of client references. You can book me in for a consult or a podcast or whatever else. And I always say, if anybody's listening to me here and is thinking, oh, gee, that sounds great, but could this really work for my business? I'm happy to do a free half-hour consult. It's not going to be an ad. I'll literally tell you, at the end of the day, you'll understand how this would work for you. Like, you, whatever your business is. So I'm happy to do that if anybody tells me they heard me on Giants.
Yeah, that's perfect. So does that look right? The website there?
It does. You got it.
I even spelled it right, huh?
You did.
Yeah. And this is eye-opening, mind-opening as well. We like Hugh just said, we tend to box ourselves in, right? So we see what we want to see within that box, but you're opening up possibilities. If it's not working for you to live in one area, go live somewhere else, right? If it's not, if what you're doing isn't getting the movement, then go try movement somewhere else. Don't let your depression override your ability to move, right? Like,
yeah, exactly. Whether it's a business or a physical location or a job or a town or a country, there's a bunch of opportunities out there. Nothing, is keeping you stuck with the one that you're currently in. Nothing other than your own mindset and your, opportunity, your ability to see another possibility.
Yeah. And if a pathway consistently shows you that it's not opening up, try another pathway, right? Go wide.
Exactly.
That's a big thing. What else do you want to share? What other pieces of wisdom?
I always like to end with that. We didn't get this far to only get this far, because I really think that's a good one for people to think about. And even, again, whether you're doing great and you're like, yeah, I'm going to keep on going. Or if you're just, but most especially if you're feeling really rotten and you're listening to all this and you're like, oh yeah, but I feel like crap and I barely got up and I'm not, because a lot of people are just in a bad place. But and again, it's all, I don't want to say it's all in your mind, but our mind is a powerful thing. It is, everyone has a lot of, I'm not saying there aren't challenges. There's a million challenges, but really your challenge can be a mountain, it can be a molehill. And if your mind sees it as a mountain, it's going to be impossible to oversee anyway. Right. Yeah. So, get out there.
I had a client reach out last night, and she feels stuck around that mindset thing. And, the idea is, how do I change, right? Anytime somebody asks, how do I change? They feel overwhelmed by the thought of change is usually what I see. They feel fear about the change and that they don't have the capacity to do it. And so going back into that, what kind of wisdom would you offer somebody that's maybe stuck, that maybe feels overwhelmed? What would you say to them?
Honestly, don't be. You have got this. Everybody feels that way. Everybody, it's like when people are shy to walk into a room and you don't want to be networking or whatever. You got to realize that like everybody in that room is feeling, or 99% of the people in that room are feeling the same way. And if you're the one that walks in and says, hey, I'm Tracy, how are you? You're actually going to make other people feel more comfortable. Same thing. Whatever's keeping you back, chances are, you're not the only one. It's you. It's other people aren't looking at you waiting for you to fail. Chances are you're looking at you waiting for you to fail. And if there are people looking at you waiting for you to fail, because I've had that, use that as a motivation. Let that be the wind beneath your wings. Don't believe them. Show yourself and show them that you were wrong. There's all those people saying all those things over there, and then there's you over here proving them wrong.
Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. Ryan, do you have some other thoughts, man?
Yeah, like we talk to a lot of giants. Every single week we get to interview people and we get to hear their story and what they do. And it never ceases to amaze me that they found something a lot of times by dang near accident, and it's crazy. Like you talked about, like a business plan. Most businesses don't have a good business plan. They just started. They just started doing something. They stepped forward, started doing something, and then went down the path, and then just kept going. They figured it out. They surrounded themselves with people that knew how to do what they were doing, or they could get them the answers, and then they grew. They just kept leveling up, leveling up, leveling up. And you look back at the person that you were when you started versus the person that you are now, and it's night and day difference, right? You have the experience, you have the wisdom. You've failed plenty of times as well. You probably failed more times. You probably haven't gotten into as many magazines or news stories or media that you you probably like it's probably a small portion that you get into, really.
Of course, yeah, you get way more
Right?
no's than you get yeses.
Right.
Exactly.
But somebody could say, oh, well, you're a failure then. Like that's
Yeah,
the Christmas story F, right? You got the
yeah,
F when you thought you got the A.
yeah,
But no,
yeah.
really, you did get the A. You did succeed. You are a success. And I tell Nick all the time, we've talked about this a lot. Nick and I have failed way more times than we've succeeded. But people look at us as maybe some sort of authority figure or some success because of what we're doing. And
But
it's
that's
the
so
it's the
true.
ex-
I
Mhm.
remember saying, and it's funny, way before when I think about the first few people that I knew that like had real money, the first few people that I knew were millionaires, right? That I knew, and that I knew their stories and knew them well enough to know. And then I started to literally notice a pattern. I was like, oh my God! I said to my husband one day, literally all the people we know that are millionaires, and at that point there were like 3 of them or something, right? And people didn't necessarily know they were, right? But I'm like, all the people that we know that are millionaires, they all had a million, and then they lost it. And then they had it again, maybe lost it again, and then they had it again. So here's the thing: it's not that they just know how to get there again. Like, they got to figure out how to stay. But for whatever reason, sometimes they lost it because business, the whole industry went kaplunk or whatever. It's not like out of fault of their own, which is, that's how money goes sometimes, right?
Mhm.
But then they started again with something different, and then they built that up again in a completely different industry. And it's
Yeah.
almost like, and I guess it's the same as the success mindset. So we were extremely successful as activists to the point where, we got Jimmy, we didn't get it alone, but our ultimate goal, an impossible goal, we ended up not only seeing realized, but we got all kinds of media, we got awards, we got blah, 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 which we never intended. 10 years ago, when you searched my name, 3,000 things came up about the death penalty work. Now, I don't know how the internet works. I guess it's just, now when you search my name, there's another 6,000 media things all about my success in this business, which one came from the other, but they were completely unrelated. The media didn't know me from that, and that's how it was, it was years apart. But basically, I reached a global, and I'm not saying this because I'm special. I'm not. I'm saying this because anybody can do it if you know how to do it. I reached global success in a activist field, which you don't make money at, which was fine. That wasn't the goal. But international recognition to the point where I'm in like 18 books being quoted, like crazy stuff, right? And then in one thing. And then I completely pivoted from zero and got to the point where now all those nice things in my bio, globally award-winning, blah, 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 international success in a completely different thing. Both of those without going to school, without ever learning somebody else telling me how to do it. Maybe that was part of the success. Without ever, going back to my natural brown hair and dressing conservatively. I done it with a whatever. But you know what I mean? So really you can
I feel like
So there's hope for me. Is that what you're saying?
Once you start getting a certain level of, what it comes down to though? Confidence. And when you have that confidence, and then you start reaching, whatever success, so that you can walk in the room fully confident in a business suit and this crazy hair, people actually think I've realized, you end up getting more success, respect in a way than if you were conforming and looking at it, because people end up thinking, well, gee, they can do that, and yet they're still.
We call that being Ryan doing Ryan things, or like Nick doing Nick things. It's being you unapologetically and just owning it, right? Amber calls it being 26.
Being 26.
I'm 53. I'm 52 too.
We took a narcissist test, and Amber scored the highest, and she was like, "I win!" And I was like, "I think it's like golf. I think you're supposed to get the lower score.
The lower score is better." Like Ryan and I had both low scores.
Yeah, it was like 11 or something like that.
That's not bad. And Amber comes in with the 26, so we call her 26 ever since. But it's funny. It's not the bad kind. The beauty of all of this is that it doesn't matter who you are, right? It's who you think you are that matters, right? Because you didn't go to school, you just went through the school of hard knocks. But the thing that was consistent through it all, and Steve Hardison, who just showed up there on the message, has a book called the Ultimate Coach, which we're gifting, by the way. So if you don't have a copy, message us and we'll get you a copy of this book. It's powerful, but it's all about being, right? Who you're being, because who you're being is consistent through anything that you touch. So it didn't matter if you went from activism to what you're in right now. It's because of who you were that it's successful. This is what you bring to the table, not the thing. The thing has nothing to do with it.
Which I think is that confidence and belief. So you really it comes down to believing that you have a place at the table and that you have something to offer. You know, that you're not boxed in by what everybody else expects you to do. You know, you come and believe in yourself. You know you have some stuff, and you come to the table. You come to the table with confidence, and you wait your turn, and you say your piece.
Yeah, beautiful. Man, is there anything you're loaded with wisdom, and I know we're just getting started. So we may have you back as a guest on the expert panels that we do.
I'd love to.
But is there anything else you want to share today?
Nope, that's it. I've babbled enough. Sorry.
That was beautiful. Ryan, how about you?
At the end of the day, like just if you find what you love and you find something that you want to do, just start being whatever it takes to get there. Be that now.
I love that.
You might not be the super successful, like yet, but start.
You know, you just said, you reminded me of my second favorite quote, which is actually from the Rocky Horror Picture Show. I hate that thing, fake it till you make it. I hate that because I like being genuine. But you know what I really love from the Rocky Horror Picture Show, which is don't dream it, be it.
Huh.
Right.
Which just means, so you're thinking it, so just do it. You start writing. Now you're an author. Start going out and do whatever. Now you're whatever. Don't just imagine maybe someday you can. Just do it. Start taking the steps.
And you'll be amazed at what comes in as you move forward and as you expect miracles. And you can go create them, and you can play with the universe, and you can see what comes in, and it's exciting. It becomes just like Legos, right? Nick has a slide where in our training where somebody might see Legos all over the floor. Like a parent might see it as a nightmare, because if you've ever stepped on kids' Legos in the middle of the night, it hurts barefooted, But somebody else sees that, and they see Legoland. They see possibilities. They see amazing creations, and it just becomes amazing what you could do just by being what you want to be now.
I love that. The idea, like the X, we do the X, where you are is where you are. It's perfect. And you didn't get this far to just get this far, right? So I have these two reminders. I am where I am. And then this little reminder for the movie, right? This is where I'm going. This is what I'm creating. This is what's coming from this, if that makes sense, from this. It's an expression of that. And the more I align with this, that'll come to fruition. It'll happen, right? It'll express from me. And so there's nowhere to get necessarily. There's stuff that comes from you, from who you're being. And so that's the beauty of what you've created here is everything that you've created is an expression of who you are on the inside. And every person watching this, who you are is who you are. Like, this is where you're at. And it's everything you need to create everything you want. I mean, it's perfect. You just got to create a vision and trust the pathway. The pathway will reveal itself as you step. Go wide, right? It's a beautiful thing. All right. I'm going to ask one more time. Is there anything else before we wrap up this show? It's a beautiful show.
No, we'll just leave it with don't dream it, be it. And you didn't get this far to only get this far. So go.
I love it. Thank you, Giants. Make it a giant day. We will see you in the next video.
Love you.